So something quite basic that we often see people still not quite sure on is the tube and tyre change. Too many people say, oh, I don't need a tube or tyre levers because I'll just bring it back to the bike shop or catch a taxi home, which if you think about the cost to do that, you might as well buy the correct product to do so. We're going to run you through how to do it. To start with, obviously, is assuming the tyre's already flat, so let the air out of that one there. And breaking the bead against the rim is your most important part to start with. So we basically pop it off against the rim, 2 thumbs against the outside, work it around into the middle of the rim, and then doing so on the other side. Cool. Now it should feel quite loose on the rim there. Now, I always start at the valve, and what you're trying to achieve is the loosest possible point at the opposite end of the valve. So if I basically put this between my hips, push it around to the top, then you should be able to create a gap at the top there. That'll then just slide off. There you go. And that's your tyre and tube off. Now, most tyres have a direction in which they should go on the wheel. My little tip is that you always find the logo and line it up with the valve hole that you can see there. That way, every time you go to look for the valve, when you need to either pump it up or remove pressure or add pressure, you can basically line the two up and just look for the logo. To start with, we start by putting half of the tyre back onto the rim. Usually this part's quite straightforward. You can see there that that's now sitting in the middle of the groove of the wheel as well. And then I've got my logo lined up with my valve hole. From there, we then add about 5 to 10 PSI into our tube. That way we can help prevent a pinch flat when we're putting the tube in. We slot the valve through the hole here, making sure that there's no fold in the tube. Very easy to make that mistake and actually basically start to inflate the tube and end up bursting this portion here. We then place the tube into the tyre, like so, making sure that it's actually sitting over the rim, because if it isn't, we can actually again create a pinch flat when we're putting the tyre on, where it actually pinches between the tube and the rim. Starting at the valve, we just push it back towards the top of the tyre a little bit, and we start to push it into the middle of the rim. Now, it's often easiest to make sure that the other bead is actually sitting in the middle of the rim, because it'll actually mean that the tyre sits more loosely when it comes to a fitting perspective. You'll see in a minute why that's useful. We then start to push the bead around the rim there. And then again, just by even using your hips, you can actually tuck the wheel into your hips to hold it steady. And the most important part is actually to basically pull the tyre all the way around to the bottom. By doing so and working it around, you actually create more area for you down here to be able to put the tyre on. So if I do that one there, you can see I'm working the tyre around to the top, just like that. So it's important to make sure that when you're pumping up the tyre, that the actual bead of the rim is sitting parallel to the tyre as well. Very important, otherwise you can potentially blow the tyre off the rim. You'll know pretty quickly, even if you just pump it up to half of the recommended pressure, which should be written on the sidewall of the tyre. If you actually give it a spin and you notice that the tyre is moving side to side, then it probably hasn't seated correctly. A very easy way to get around this is to actually spray soapy water between the tyre and the rim. It'll actually give it a slipperier surface to slide on and hook. So it is very important to make sure that we check the side of the tyre for the recommended tyre pressure. If you do overinflate them, they can obviously blow off the rim. You can also create an imperfection in the tyre as well, because it can cause it to stretch too far. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or get in contact with us at alchemycycletrader.com.au.